all the stuff right here on the table. Put it on this
all
gun.
on the gun?
Put it on the gun. We're going to do it all at once. Is there a switch that can actuate every single one of these devices at once?
Why doesn't Magpul put M-Lock on the actual magazine, I wonder? So you could put accessories on the mag. That's so much space that's just wasted.
You can put a laser on a mag.
Yeah.
And you can have a laser mag.
Can you imagine if you let's glue some M-Lock to like the side of the fucking, some rail to the side of the mag.
We'll drill it. We don't need to glue it.
We'll just fucking start putting lasers on the magazine. I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen anybody put accessories on a magazine.
What if we mount the laser to the tube?
If it's, in tandem with the goggle?
With the goggle.
That'd be even better.
Whenever your head turns.
Right. Yeah, it's looking where you're looking.
You gotta Welcome everybody to part 2 of our Shop Talk series involving night vision. So once again, I have James Miksch here, good friend, and if you haven't noticed already, we switched spots. Mm-hmm. So I'm on this side of the table now, and he's on that side of the table.
There's nothing wrong with your television set.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. It's part 2, and as we mentioned in part 1, part 2 is we're gonna kind of go more of accessories that are used in conjunction with night vision. And we don't have all of them, obviously, but we have some good samples of what's out there. Some stuff that's for, obviously restricted, or some stuff that's able for, that's counter to that was for civilian use and things like that. And some can be bought online, and some for, those with the law enforcement agencies and things like that. There's a whole purchasing process to get the restricted lasers. And also a couple optics and also weapon lights. And James is going to explain, obviously, the difference between, as far as true IR and then what IR is, because there's a lot of accessories out there that say they're infrared, but there's yes and no to that, and he can go more in detail to that. But yeah, if you want to go into as far as the optic settings, and obviously we have an EOTech there in XPS 3-0, and it has that little button right there that says NV.
Yeah, let's get that up there. Yeah, so when you're talking about optics, running them with night vision, generally when you're doing helmet-borne night vision, you're using a laser or the infrared illumination, then the laser to aim to actually target what you're shooting at, especially when it comes to like the CQB type something. But with your optic, a lot of them will have the option or have settings to where you can reduce the light that's in the optic. Enough to where it won't damage the night vision if they're ran in tandem. Okay. Or to reduce the amount of escaping ambient light so that you don't have a glow when you're trying to be in the dark, right?
And I noticed if it's too high a setting, it kind of will wash out the rest of the picture of the goggle.
You can make it really hard to see through the night vision, and it can actually burn the tube depending on which way you have them set up. And I've seen night vision ran on weapon mounted with different optics in a ton of different ways. I wouldn't bash any of them because there's some where I look at and it's like, man, that's silly, and then you play with it and it's like, for hog hunting, this may be great, or for whatever you're doing, it may be fantastic. All the
personal preference, user preference.
Right. Well, with all our products, we have professional use stuff, we have recreational use stuff. So you got to kind of decide what's right for you and set it up in a way that's right for you. There's good, there's bad, there's dangerous. Lasers, one of the things about lasers specifically is eye damage, and so that's why we get to a restricted level product. The FDA actually controls lasers above a certain power. Okay. So when you start looking at the milliwatts and the different radiation levels of the lasers, you do get into some restricted product that's available to military law enforcement only. That is generally an FDA regulation depending on the power of the laser.
And so that's what a lot of people don't know when they say it's a class 3 laser. It's restricted. It's primarily restricted by the FDA, correct?
Exactly.
Because a lot of people don't know. I mean, you wouldn't even know if it's hitting your eye, but it's going to do permanent damage, correct?
For sure. Just us in this room with the stuff that's around with the glass and the shiny stuff. If we had one of these lasers that was firing and we weren't even pointing at one another, we're radiating and bouncing around a bunch of dangerous light. I think most of the stuff we have on this table is in the mode where you're going to have a nominal ocular hazard distance.
Remember that a little.
Yeah, exactly. In NOHDs.
NOHDs, there you go. That's another one.
NOHD is important to know. So basically what that says is if we take this laser, and this one we have the safety screws installed, so we're going to keep it will be, we'll leave those in anytime you're not needing the really high powers on it. And without breaking down all the stuff on all the different models and what milliwatts are and all that kind of stuff. Suffice it to say you have low power, you have high power. if we want to stay within the or outside of our nominal ocular hazard distances, so this is strictly an example, but let's say on low you would have 120 meters before this wouldn't do permanent eye damage. So, and that takes direct contact with your eye for about a 3 beat, something like that, to really cause some major damage. There are lasers out there that are produced for weapon-mounted purposes that are non-skin safe lasers.
Oh wow!
So there's stuff out there, and there's stuff that I've seen stuff be able to be imported, ordered on eBay that is extremely high power, and you can do some really serious eye damage to yourself or to someone else.
And that's something to be careful in a sense if you don't really understand the concept of that, or you're new to lasers. And some people say, well, why is it restricted? I mean, that's a reason. Obviously, there's awareness behind this product because you could really cause permanent damage out there. And
exactly. And you hear people say, oh, it's an eye-safe laser. Really, there's no eye-safe laser.
Gotcha.
Right? You're damaging your eye with any light you expose to it. So when you pinpoint it like that and concentrate that energy into a laser dot, you can really hurt your eyes.
So for individuals who don't have a laser yet, but they also have night vision, obviously when previous episode we had that clip on. So for optics such as this, so the EOTech night vision setting, and here we have a Aimpoint T2 on this mount. And this T2 also has MVG settings, or what they describe in the manual.
Correct.
So so that would be optimal to, because I know shouldering a weapon, trying to put your head around it, trying to get down there, you're not really gonna. It's very tough. So in my personal experience is always attaching the night vision device behind the optic, but obviously you don't have to attach your head, so there's setbacks. That I mean, if you're hunting, that's one thing, but patrol would be another.
Call that entry level. Call it the most basic. The easiest way to do it would be to mount your optic, and then take a product like the PVS 14 with a weapon mount.
Yeah.
And there's some cool weapon mounts out there.
Yeah.
One of the kits that I know of that ships with a weapon mount in it.
Okay.
Others, there's ring mounts. There's flip to the side. There's all kinds of cool stuff
for these.
To be able to mount one behind the optic. But the danger you run is your optic, since there is light emitting from the back of it, then the tube is taking in that light, magnifying that light like we talked about in the last episode, specifically in that area where your reticle is. So whether that reticle is a dot or a ring in a dot like an EOTech reticle, or even a scope with an illuminated reticle, which I don't know why you would use on a magnified in that manner, but any light that's coming into that tube stands to damage it if it's exposed to it for too long. So the night vision modes will take the setting, the brightness on the reticles down to their lowest settings, sometimes not even visible to the naked eye, but will help protect the night vision piece.
Yeah, so since consumers, they think, I mean, like I said, it's nothing against people as far as when they don't understand, but like when they think night vision, they think, hey, I'm going to click that setting on when it's dark, and they won't see anything.
That's right.
I mean, you got to understand, like a lot of people, in the sense of like, there's so many ins and outs to firearms and things like that, and also the accessories and the scopes, that there's terms that sometimes I don't even understand and I've had to learn.
For sure.
But when they see the NV button, and this is just speaking from past experience, some people ask like, oh, does that mean when it's at dark, I can use that when it's dark? Not necessarily. So that button, it's funny because you press it, you won't see anything. You put a night vision device on there, and the reticle will be there crystal clear. And as far as a good setting, because I remember years ago when you showed me a 14 that you let somebody borrow
burn a reticle
and burn a reticle,
right.
and so when you put it up there, you would see a reticle etched in because he didn't have the MVG button, and he just kept messing with the brightness and left it on the optic all night, and it burned it in there.
Overloads the holes in the microchannel plate in a specific area with light, wears them out essentially, and then it leaves that image in the tube. So.
Risky stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
as far as damaging expensive gear goes,
exactly.
Right? So,
and that's another thing too. And some people, when they buy certain optics, go, I don't need a night vision setting. Hey, completely understandable. But when it comes to you do have a night vision optic, it's highly preferable that you get that, because even though you might have a helmet mount or something like that, there might be a night where you have like great illumination in the sense of full moon stuff. You can kind of navigate while you're walking around, but mounted to your weapon, you want to, obviously get a better field of view. So
for sure, and so that gets us back to like where we talked about yesterday, where night vision is really only magnifying the ambient light, or the light that it has available to it, making that light more intense, image intensification tubes. So what you need to do is make sure that whatever system you're using has enough light so that it can magnify that for you and do a good job letting you see in the dark. If you're in an urban area, you may not need that. Maybe there's street lights, maybe there's plenty of lights, ambient light, where you don't need it as much. It's still great for like taking shadows out, seeing in a dark corner, stuff like that. But some systems have infrared light built into them, like we talked about with the PVS-14. That monocular was actually specified originally to have a small IR light in it. It's really low power. It's really for navigation, walking, map reading. You can see in a room with it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Kind of
I remember that. Obviously past military experience, but you can really turn it on and dial in that focus and look at a map or look at something up close under that condition.
Other systems are built without that in them, and those are taken out usually to shed weight or because they're just not being used. And so when you get into IR light, with any of these devices that attach to your weapon, you can talk about LED generated or laser generated IR light.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I remember so years ago when James and I first met, it was 2012, and that's where I really started. You think you know anything about night vision because you use it, but you don't know I didn't know anything about it. I knew how to turn it on and what I could do, but
I still don't. But
but I remember being a demo and got a good education as far as when it comes to IR illumination. So as certain devices on the market for civilian use, some of them will have like a typical lasers will have a laser designated, which is a pointer, or they'll have a secondary laser, which is a flood, in a sense like a IR, like a illuminator spotlight.
Flashlight, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a flashlight, so you can see under IR under your night vision. And so this is a commercial laser here, D-ball, and made by Steiner. And you can see it has this, but this Engel here also has the same feature, but it's completely different.
Laser generated illuminator.
Yeah. So this is
a little bit different, a little bit cleaner, a little more expensive, a little bit cleaner, get you out there a little further.
So that's the difference. One is laser generated and one is LED.
It's how that light is generated. And so if we start with IR flashlights, there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
I believe this is a Surefire with a IR setting on it.
So it has a setting, so we're using this in the past, has an IR and then off and then has a white light. So explain.
And so they'll have a separate LED in there that's generating IR light. They have one LED that's firing their white light and one that's firing their IR light, I believe. I don't claim to be an expert on any of these products, but to my understanding, that's how it works. And so then they're emitting IR light. And if you look at IR light as far as being on one end of the spectrum, you can come pretty far to the visible side and you get what's called near IR.
Gotcha.
So if it's LED generated, a lot of times, and even laser generated, if you look directly into it or directly at it, which you don't want to do with a laser for sure. But if you look directly at it, especially with a flashlight, you may see a little red hue or a little red glow. The further into the visible spectrum that is, away from infrared into the spectrum, the more visible it is. So you may have something that illuminates perfectly well on a dark night, but it's putting out a little bit of red light. And so that's something to understand as well. You have near IR, you have IR, you have laser IR, you have LED IR.
Yeah. And that was that turning point. That was like a big turning point for me, because in the sense when that one day where I see IR thinking, oh yeah, it's infrared. I already automatically know what that is. But there was a big teaching moment when somebody else individual had that on the weapon, say IR, and they were demonstrating it. But James comes out and in a sense educates individuals in the sense of like, okay, well look at, turn on your IR, come take a step back, and then look at the front of that light, and it was emitting a red light.
Right.
So it really was an IR. So some people have that misconception that you switch to IR, you're illuminating, but you got to remember that on the other side of that illumination, if it's near IR, it's projecting a red light.
Which may not be a big deal for your hawk hunters or something like that.
Oh yeah,
right?
not for deal. Yeah.
I mean, an animal probably doesn't care about a little bit of red light coming out of there, and so that's good. It's usually a lot less money, and so you can get into it a lot more economically. I know Streamlight has some good products. Surefire has some good products that are all LED generated.
Well, plus for navigation too. I mean, if you have it outward pointing at, I mean, this vampire light we've used obviously we've used it for hunting and training. As far as low light training, things like that with night vision, but it does a great job as far as navigation.
And
too.
you also skirt the regulation when you get to a laser that's really bright in IR for illumination. You're crossing that boundary, and now it's a regulated product or controlled product. So you can get a lot brighter IR LED than you can without the FDA regulation.
Yeah. So here we have the MAL. C1 Plus. This is a good laser out in the commercial market. It's done well. We use it hunting.
Civilian version?
Yeah, civilian version. And does really well. Use it for training and hog hunting a lot here in Texas.
Yeah, you hear good things about how clean the light is, about the ergonomics of it. Those are all things to take in consideration when you're adding something to any weapon, anything to any weapon system, but especially laser that you're going to have to fire, turn on, turn off.
Yeah, and it has multiple buttons up top, also switches, everything else like that. And we'll go to some switches that we have. But one thing too is that you got to take in consideration is like now when you start mounting lights, lasers, everything to your rifle, rail space. So that's one good thing. Obviously, the top rail available mounts up here, kind of in general.
Yeah. Do you mount at 12? Do you mount it at 3, 9? Where do you want it? What are you going to be doing with it? All that kind of stuff. All things to consider when you're looking for a system.
Exactly. And then, like I said, majority of them have been obviously direct mount. I know, obviously, for the NGAL, preferred, obviously, top direct mount. Majority of people run it that way.
Yeah, NGAL is a next generation aiming laser, so this thing is tiny. It's obviously a lot smaller than its predecessor, the PEC 15.
Yeah.
Not
Which
the PEC 15
we don't
service,
have because I failed that one on this video, and James has been nonstop on me. So
right.
It's all right.
But the operation's real similar. This thing's just a lot smaller. So some people like that. Some people like this. It's less hanging off either side of the weapon. That it's less rail space. But some people don't like it because it is smaller. It's a little different to get to the button to fire it, stuff like that. So different operation. Sometimes it's weird. Guys are used to something, so they like to stick with that. And other times, people really embrace change and the new cool guy stuff.
Well, and plus accessories out. So obviously, it's a newer laser. The attachment for the switch is proprietary, so you only get one option. Right? But as far as like the PEQs, there's other companies out there such as Unity making a tap switch, or Surefire's made one. So a lot of people are familiar with the 15 switch. So
and I'm guessing it's only a matter of time until that happens with some of these other products
exactly.
that are
when
newer,
it catches
where
up.
they have a switch that's a dual use switch as well.
Yeah, because this D-ball right here, the I2. This one also will accept the switch for the 15 too. So
yeah, that PEC 15 is a standardized deal.
Yeah, standardized deal. It's probably I don't know, man. Maybe it's the highest produced IR laser illuminator.
There's a lot of them out there for sure.
Yeah, it could be, but we don't have one, right?
Right.
So highest produced one,
but
we don't have one.
But the switch actually brings a good point, because you do want to have the ability to switch back to white light, right?
Yeah.
So just because you have good working night vision, you have good working IR illumination and laser, doesn't mean that you won't in a big hurry want to switch back to white light. So that's really important. The dual pressure pad is nice, or at least knowing the function from your laser, your IR illuminator to your white light illuminator.
And that's another thing too, is obviously through the years, as far as as night vision's gone, get more popularity. There's a lot more companies that have been coming out with obviously lasers. Obviously with the D-Ball Steiner here, L3 is with the PEQ or Insight with the PEQ 15 and its other models.
L3 Harris Technologies builds the PEC 15. They call it an at-peel. And for professional use, they build that in a bunch of different versions for the military and for law enforcement. NGAL is their product.
Yeah.
You have B. Myers. They build a lot of lasers, but the MAL is one of their really popular products.
And there's also a civilian version of the as far as for the PEQ-15 at-peel C, correct?
That's right, the at-peel C. Yep.
And then also now, new stuff, obviously Holosun. I mean, some of y'all with the red dots and things like that, and I know a lot of people out there are starting to like them as far as the cost point, price point to the durability. So now they have an IR laser right here. Not this one as an illuminator, but just the laser itself. So it's awesome to see, obviously a more wide variety of lasers out there on the commercial market, and then different price ranges, because like I said, everybody is working within a certain budget, but they should all have the capability.
Lots of demand for these kind of products these days.
It's good that everybody has the capability too, by the way. Hopefully one day night vision will get a little down. I'm sure like some companies out there will have a certain type of rating that will be more cost effective, but like I said, it's one of those good things where the capability should be offered to everybody. And I'm glad there's multiple companies out there that offer different price points on that.
Correct. I mean, that's why there's a BMW and a Chevrolet and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Different people have different needs, and it applies to all this stuff as well. So.
Another thing, so let's talk about budgets, because that's a thing, obviously, huge thing with this gear. Like I said, some of it could be very expensive, and when you spend that kind of money, you want to make sure you get the right, you buy the right stuff, and it's going to work for you. And so I imagined you have your opinion as far as, where, because, do you spend more money in the night vision itself, or spend more money in the accessories if you had to balance it out? Because obviously, what you've explained, there's a difference in the sense of like, applications like hog hunting to military combat operations to law enforcement, tactical, things like that. So, but yeah, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, we do all the time with like what people need versus what people think they need, what they're doing versus what equipment's available. So I mean, there's a ton of factors that go into it, and a big one is budget, right? So in my opinion, you dump most of your money into the most advanced night vision technology you can possibly get, and then you look for a IR illumination solution that will do what you need to do. Mainly because let's take it from a combat standpoint, right? That most of this gear starts being developed at that level for that purpose. And obviously budget isn't as much of an issue there, but they're doing certain things with it, and they adapt it to how they need to do it. If you take that same technology and you bring it over to law enforcement, well, now you may get into a situation where you have way too much laser illumination. If we have a laser that's designed to fire a laser out to 10,000 yards for a squad operated weapon, then we don't necessarily need that in a 20 by 20 apartment building that we're clearing, right? So that's a big factor. And then if you take that same thing to the hog hunter, he may be able to get away because he's on a moonlit night, because there's ambient light around, that kind of stuff. Or he's shooting a hog. That hog doesn't know the difference between a visible green light and an IR green light, or he may not care, right? So you can get away with a lot less in the way of illumination and laser aiming. Whereas if you have a really good night vision system, you're going to, as technology advances, you won't need to replace it as soon. And it's going to be doing a lot more for you. It can do a lot more with that available ambient light if you have a much higher FOM rating in your tube.
So it's good to know, because
for sure,
just like I said, it's good to just obviously go more higher end on the night vision, obviously, and then hey, laser. That's another thing too, is breakage too. I mean, you buy a very expensive laser and you're out hunting and somebody runs it over. I don't know. Weird stuff happens.
Everything can get broken, right?
Yeah,
so
I've had
that goes for night
stuff,
vision too.
Fall out of the helicopter.
You look at warranty periods. You look at durability. You look at environmental issues like, hey, if I get this piece wet, is it going to stop working?
Gotcha.
That kind of stuff. If you do spend that much money on it, you really want to look and make sure that you're going to be taken care of by the person you buy it from. So reputable dealer, reputable manifacturer.
So if you're out driving around a hog hunt and you spill beer on it, it might break.
Exactly. Well,
just kidding. We don't do that. Just a joke.
The other thing, though, is that you can always just get on the internet and consult some 12-year-old that's playing Modern Warfare on which laser is going to to be the best for you.
That's true, because those lasers on those games are pretty high speed.
Pretty accurate.
Way accurate. But yeah, that's. I mean, like I said, it's information for you guys, man. Like I said, it's a lot of money to drop, and like I said, you want to obviously get the best value you can at the same time. Not waste excess money on stuff that essentially you don't need. And there's stuff out there that's just not available. But there are good lasers on the commercial market, really good, really solid. And you'd be surprised, honestly. I mean, putting them two next to each other at night, I mean, I was extremely surprised because, there's a difference, but it's not like anything crazy noticeable as far as like some stuff, like LA5, it's like, it's high power. But putting it next to like Maul or Steiner, I mean, you could work with it.
How clean is the beam, stuff like that. You're just looking at light quality at that point, and obviously all that stuff is somewhat subjective, right? So buy what's within your budget. Buy the night vision piece. Put the bulk of your budget towards that. I would say. Figure out what you need for illumination, depending on what you're doing. I mean, today we can go buy a pretty powerful near IR illuminator for $65, $70, or we can go spend, $2,500 on a, or up to $5,000 on some IR illumination, IR aiming.
That's kind of the thing too. And if your tube is crappy, you go cheap on it. Then say if you buy a really clean laser, well, how can you tell if it's really clean if the tube is not good? So. And
if you're hog hunting, does the quality of that light matter? If you're trying to PID a suspect and your livelihood and your life depends on it, then maybe you want to spend a little more and get a high quality product. Right?
Yeah. So. But you can see a hog. It's
all depends on the situation you're in and what you're going to be doing with the products, right?
But that's a good point in the sense of, like I said, if PID is a big issue, especially for law enforcement. Of course you want the best out there because you need to have as much clarity as you can to make that decision.
Right. Just like TRIARC rifles, right? We're promoting it being a quality product that you can depend on, and same thing. If you need it for professional use and you need to depend on it, whether that's because you're going to be pissed because you didn't get to shoot a pig, or because your life depends on it, then make good choices and spend your money where you can, and don't be afraid to get that credit card out. That's what this country thrives on.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff, and like we've talked before, it's good knowledge to have. Obviously, you out there, if you have friends out there who already have the stuff, or if you're interested in purchasing stuff, it's just good knowledge to have. as far as when you go out there and shop, because like I said, there is a lot of stuff on Amazon, a lot of stuff on eBay, lots of come from overseas. You got to be careful, guys. Like that, like you can get ripped off or have something get a more powerful laser than what it's advertised and cause some damage if you don't know what you're doing.
Right, or get into legal trouble with it for sure. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're doing these to put some information out there. We can't cover everything, but we're always open to questions. We may not be able to answer every question, and we may not know what we're talking about.
Well, what we'll do is just like the first, like we did our part 1 with this part 2. I forgot to mention that too. But once these drop, I'll make sure you know, James is available. Preferably, we'll be drunk. But once we drop it, we'll make sure that we're available for the comments, because any questions that we haven't covered, or you have anything else like that, just drop them in the comments, and we'll be there and to answer any questions you guys have. And
absolutely, and maybe necessary to do a part 3, because now that we've covered the night vision devices themselves, the illumination devices, and aiming, we can get into accessories. We can talk about helmets. We can talk about helmet mounts. We can talk about IFF devices. You know, other pieces of IR or lighting equipment that go well with night vision systems.
Yeah, and you're right about the helmets too, because we do have some, but just like how there's all these different types of lasers, there's a lot of different helmet options, even head-mounted options without helmets.
Sure.
They're all out there, so we gotta, probably beg, borrow, and steal to get all that stuff, and call our friends and gather some up. Because what I have is what James uses, because that's pretty much what I do. He's the expert, so I ask him on the stuff like that. But yeah, as far as the part 3, because we do plan to do obviously a live range demonstration. That's also going to be in the works for this series too.
Good.
And we have a subject matter expert who's really good at demonstrating obviously use of weapons and
a lot of time behind nods, a lot of time over laser.
Yeah, so. A lot of time behind all that stuff, doing good work. But on that though, James, do you have anything you want to close out for everybody out there? I
don't think so. I think, like you said, we welcome questions, and by all means, we love feedback on these things too. Yeah. So tell us what we missed, tell us what we should have covered, and we can discuss it.
Exactly. And good point. Like I said, the comments, because there's so much to talk about, and I'm sure if we were sitting here, down a bottle of whiskey, we'd have all this, good ideas and everything else, which you typically do. And then when all those good ideas come in, then we get time to do it. Like just right now, we're like, what was that we said again?
Well, and all the tech is so in depth too. So, and there's so many options out there. We could do this, and it would be a 4-hour video. So
I sat through the classes.
Right.
I can't remember all the information. Yeah. But we do have some, as far as what we'll add to the video with this, we do have some good B-roll, obviously from some of the training stuff. I was able to capture things like that. So we'll kind of include some of that, just a little bit, some slides and some other information. But yeah, place it in the comments. And we want to hear if there's anything we missed or any other questions you have. We'll be available to both answer the comments, the comments when the video drops. So we make sure we cover all that stuff. And other than that, though, yeah, we got reservations tonight, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like, subscribe, and share if you know anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff. And we appreciate all the support as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks.